Hey, welcome back. I'm Carissa and I'm in the middle of my Master Gardener training, which has been just such a treat. We've had excellent presenters on numerous different topics and it really has been a great experience so far. So today's topic is vegetable gardening. And if you're a gardener, you probably in one way or another are a vegetable gardener already. So by definition, a vegetable garden is a garden that exists to grow vegetables, obviously, and other useful plants for consumption. And it can be acres and acres if you think about a production farm where they're growing mass quantities, or it can be as small as one pot or container. There are also different ways you can garden. Some of the different ways would be hydroponics, right? Indoor gardening with water and adding nutrients in the water. Raised bed gardening, traditional in-ground beds, container gardening, vertical gardening. Most of us are probably urban growers, and some of the different challenges we face are small spaces, right? Some of us probably have a balcony and that's the majority of our space to grow in. Shade is also a consideration. Some of our yards might be growing in a very mature neighborhood with established trees and we're dealing with a lot of shade. Roots would be another consideration, right? If we are in a dense suburban area, plus we've got these mature trees, roots are definitely a challenge that some of us face. Water restrictions, right? If you are growing within city limits, you might be restricted with your irrigation schedule. And pests, right? And that's not only in the form of insects, but also critters, right? Deer and birds and squirrels, and some of us have rats. All of those are different challenges that we can face in gardening. So if the basics of gardening is just to produce food for consumption, let's talk about what kind of site you need in order to grow that food that you want to consume. The first thing is sunlight, and this is the only thing you cannot change. A lot of the challenges I just mentioned are workable and fixable, but sun is the only thing you cannot change. So assessing your situation and choosing a good sunny spot is important in choosing the right spot for your vegetable garden. 6 to 8 hours is preferred. There are some leafy greens that can grow in the shade, but for the most part, 6 to 8 hours is preferred. This is something we can control, but just for the ease of watering and irrigation, it's good to be aware of where your hoses are, where your underground water pipes are if you want to add irrigation, some sort of permanent type, and just keeping in mind that. Another consideration is air and soil. So what kind of wind patterns does your property have? Is it very windy? Do you maybe have to plant a windbreak of hedges? Soil, are you going to need to truck in some amendments or even brand new soil? Considering all these things is integral in planning your vegetable garden. Access and care. So I live on an acreage and my vegetable garden's a little bit far away actually, if I'm being lazy. So I do choose to plant a few of my herbs and leafy greens a little bit closer to the house just so that I have no excuse in getting them. But planning your vegetable garden and remembering the care and the maintenance that is required for a healthy garden and easy access, right? You might want to make sure that you might want to ensure that you've got a pathway to move a wheelbarrow for amending your soil and trucking out all the old debris. These are all good things to think about. And your unique situation. So we will get into raised bed gardening and different things like that, but realizing what your specific situation is. Maybe you have a disability, maybe you are aging, as we all are. You need to be considering all these different things when you're planning your vegetable garden, because I think the easier it is to maintain and the more suited it is for our personal preferences will make it more enjoyable, but also easier to get out there. And lastly, your site specifics. So water stands and cold microclimates. So just observe, take some time if you are maybe still in the process of planning your own vegetable garden, take some time to observe maybe where you lack drainage, maybe you see water collecting in spots in your yard. That would probably not be a great place for a garden, but like I said, these are things you can work with. Adding a raised bed if you have poor drainage is a great idea. And then cold microclimates. All of our yards have microclimates, you know, some that are a little bit more exposed and they stay cooler, and some that are the opposite, right? They're just a little bit warmer, the frost seems to leave and the soil tends to warm up a little bit quicker. So keep that in mind too when you're planning your vegetable garden. So when you are designing your vegetable garden, keep these things in mind for your soil. Most roots need 12 inches to grow, right? Especially if we're thinking about root crops. 12 inches is actually the bare minimum. 18 inches would be better. But keeping in mind just the depth of soil that you need for a healthy vegetable garden is very important. And of course, this is the same for pots as well, right? A deep pot is going to give your plant the best chance to grow. And purchasing the best quality soil that you can afford. So if you're in a situation where you do need to bring in soil, your soil is either non-existent or just not very useful, and you've decided that it's the best idea to just truck in new soil, purchase the best that you can afford at that time. It is the best investment. Your soil is literally the foundation of your garden, and you're going to have a great start if you start with the best quality. But knowing that you are bringing in new soil, keep in mind that you do still need to amend it. Most soil, unless it's compost, probably needs to be amended in some way. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the most common minerals or nutrients that your soil is going to be lacking, and you will be needing to amend. So here are some tips to start, and I really wish that I considered these when I started vegetable gardening. Consider what you'll actually eat. I think we can get very excited about trying new varieties and different vegetables, and it's just exciting to see them grow, and that's definitely not a waste. But as you get into gardening, just being a little bit more mindful of what you're actually consuming is a great idea. This last year, I definitely tried to focus a little bit more on the vegetables we actually eat, and it made for a better harvest actually, and more exciting too, because sometimes, you know, you just grow too much kale. It's beautiful, but do we all love kale as much as we're growing it? Maybe some of us do. And another tip would be to start with quality seeds. So if you know reputable companies that sell seeds, purchase from there. Stay away from the ones that don't really have great reviews. And also to read your packets thoroughly. Just a simple glance will tell you if that's a cold hardy or a warm season crop. It'll help save you from a little bit of frustration as you're growing. Never have empty soil. We have this idea where we have to clean up our beds at the end of the year, but really leaving the old debris is a very good idea, just to keep your soil covered a little bit and add some of those nutrients into the soil as they decompose. But it also helps with weed suppression. You know, if there's already something growing in there, it's going to be less susceptible to getting new weeds coming in. And just to shade your soil as well during those months when you're not actually growing anything. And along the lines of always making sure that your soil is never left empty, have something like lettuce seed on hand always and readily available to you, just so that you can always be plunking in a fresh set of lettuce to grow. It's not only going to make sure that your soil is not empty, but it's also going to provide you with a constant source of lettuce throughout the growing season. Just great tips, I think, just to keep in mind as we perfect the way we grow in our vegetable gardens. I just thought it was interesting to talk about some of the vegetable gardening trends that are going around right now, and maybe some of the things that are maybe misconceptions. So the first one would be grow bags. I got really excited about grow bags a few years ago when I thought, oh, that would be great for potatoes, right? You're going to be dumping it out anyway. But there is a concern for this, especially because a couple years ago we had this insane heat wave that came through, and most grow bags are black, which absorb heat. So keep in mind that if you are growing grow bags, maybe keep them shaded wherever you're growing them. Raised beds. This is another sort of trendy topic, and it's not without its benefits, right? It's definitely a lot easier, but there's a lot of cost involved with raised beds, and that's not to say that in-ground beds are going to produce less quality vegetables, right? So just keeping all these things into consideration, right? We can sort of hop on these trends and sort of lose focus on why we're growing vegetables anyway. Our presenter was quite frugal, and I really appreciated a lot of the tips that she was sharing, because if you think about it, if you're pouring all this money into your vegetable garden, yes, it's a benefit to your health and well-being, but if it's costing you a lot of money, you could probably buy some of that organic, locally grown produce for a better price than growing it if you're going to fall into all of these super, super expensive trends. So just something to keep in mind. Another trend is square foot gardening. And this is just sort of the idea of not planting in rows, rather in sort of cubes and a little bit more dense, not crowded, but dense planting. And there are books on this by a fabulous author, Mel Bartholomew. I have his book right here. And I think it's a really good book that sort of changes our idea of your traditional sort of vegetable gardens. Vertical gardening, I already explained that. That's a really great way, especially if you have a balcony, just to get a ton of plants growing. Hydroponics, also a new trend, sort of taking us by storm. I have an aereo garden, and I use that for herbs in the winter time, and I love it. It's very convenient. Crop rotation is not necessarily a trend, but sort of something that's talked about a lot in the gardening world. And there is some sense to it. A lot of the diseases that are specific to root crops can be managed with crop rotations. Definitely a good consideration. Companion planting. I think all of us have seen the charts about calendula and marigold and why you should put them in your vegetable gardens and what they do. And there is some good sense to that as well. But if the pest is already there, it's maybe not going to do a huge amount in controlling it completely. There are some beneficial plants that we all should be planting. No one method is going to completely eradicate all the pests from our garden. So just keeping that in mind. And interplanting and underplanting. There's a method out there called the Three Sisters planting method, and that's with corn, squash, and beans. And it's just this idea that, being mindful about what each plant takes from the soil, what it adds to the soil, how it grows, right, in height and width, and all of those types of things. So I know I said this before, but just another sort of PSA and a reminder to read your seed packets really thoroughly. Even a quick glance will tell you a lot of things that will save you frustration. I know growing stock in my flower garden for the first time was very frustrating because I didn't realize it was a cold season crop. So similarly in our vegetable gardens, there are different varieties within each vegetable group. Just being informed about that as we're choosing and selecting varieties will help us a lot when growing a good vegetable garden. Be on the lookout for maturity dates, right? Even within pumpkins, you can get a huge range of maturity dates. Resistant varieties, if you are known to deal with a certain disease or pathogen, maybe be aware of that and read some of the packets to see if they offer a more resistant variety. Look to see if you have a cold hardy or a warm season crop. And depending on the season you're growing, maybe you want both. And looking for other helpful information, just to be a little bit more informed about the selections we're making and choosing. I stumbled across this quote and I really enjoyed it, so I thought I would share it with you. It says, "Feed the soil and it will feed the plants." And I think it's really empowering to think about the control we have as gardeners, making a healthy soil and what it will give back to us, right? It goes on to say the science of gardening is complex, but the actual practice is simple. And I think that's a relief to us, right? I've taken different courses within this Master Gardener training and soil pathology and all these different things and the makeup of soil and structure. And it can be a little bit overwhelming. Like it says, it's complex, but the practice is actually simple, right? Using our common sense and observing and growing as we ourselves are growing in knowledge, but also watching our plants grow is really going to benefit us. So here are a few ways to promote soil health in our gardens. Never have your soil uncovered. Always make sure it's mulched, or leaving our old decaying plants there in place as a green mulch or a brown mulch actually. It feeds the microbes in our soil, but it also deters some of the weed pressure. It shades out some of our soil as well, which is very helpful. Get your soil tested. If you're having issues, matter of fact, everyone should have their soil tested, myself included. But if you're having specific issues within your plants, it'd be a great idea to get your soil tested and to see what nutrients you lack, what your soil structure is, what's the makeup of your soil, and I think it would be a great benefit. And when in doubt, add organic matter. We can never add too much compost. Compost will never hurt our soil. Like over-fertilizing can, but composting is always a great idea. And then annually adding blood and bone meal. They are full of two of the main minerals that our soil needs, and they usually are lacking. Staying on top of our weeds, right? As soon as you give them an inch and they take a mile. That's typically how it is with weeds. So making sure that you're on top of them right when they're small is a great idea, and that will actually build your soil health as well. Watering appropriately. Overwatering can actually affect the taking up of our nutrients in our plants. So making sure you're not watering too much and making sure you're not watering too little. A great thing to observe, right? So bring in your bugs and birds. These are our beneficial friends. These are the partners we want in our gardens. They will help us with immense pest pressure. They will help bring in amazing different things in our ecosystems. So encouraging life in our gardens, providing food source, and all of those different things is a great idea for healthy soil and plants. So the woman presenting was really encouraging us to give it a try to grow annually all year long. The presenter was in a different zone than I am, a little bit more mild. She was in a coastal area, whereas here in the interior we are a little bit more cold in our winters. But some of these things can be grown, and I will be trying it for next year. So she recommended for late May to early June to be starting our Brussels sprouts, winter cabbage, and parsnips. And then mid to late June, purple sprout broccoli, winter cauliflower, and cabbage. Early July, starting carrots, beets, rutabagas, endive, radicchio, Swiss chard, leaf beet, and kohlrabi. Late July to early August, arugula, hardy lettuce, collards, kale, mustards, the spinach type, kales, spinach mustard, Chinese green, and winter onions. And then for late August to mid-September would be corn salad, cilantro, arugula, and winter lettuce. And getting these plants in at these specific times is ideal, not only to let the plant mature ahead of time before the cold weather hits, but in order to get it to harvest when you want it, over just spaced over the winter so that you can be harvesting throughout the winter. I really appreciated just her experience in gardening, the presenter, and just how she really encouraged us to sort of create these patterns in our head so that we kind of can list off the seasons and remember, oh, it's time to plant this, it's time to plant that. For example, she said, remember July 1st as carrot day. That's the day you always plant carrots in order to have harvest in the fall and winter. So for February and March, she says to start peas and onion sets and strawberries. April and May are leafy greens, carrots, beets, potatoes, radish, scallion, broccoli, Chinese cabbage, cauliflower, and then also more peas, leeks, and onion sets. Mid-May to early June would be sweet corn, beans, more peas and leafy greens, cauliflower, winter cabbage, and then transplant your pre-started peppers, tomatoes, cukes, squash, melons, and basil. And this is obviously specific to your gardening temperatures and your soil temperature, your weather pattern, but just an overview just to show you how different vegetables really need to be started at different times. Now maybe you are new at vegetable gardening and you want some easy crops to start. So here's a list that are great for beginners to try. Lettuce, green beans, radishes, tomatoes, zucchinis, peppers, beets, carrots, chard, spinach, kale, and peas. And tomatoes and peppers, it would be great to start from a transplant. So you're buying a seedling from the store. They might be a little bit trickier to start if you're brand new. But growing them once they're a mature seedling would be a great idea to start with. And then some of the more advanced crops, you know, if you're not wanting to be super frustrated and overwhelmed and you're very new to it, maybe if you're a more seasoned gardener, try cauliflower, celery, melons, corn, artichoke, and asparagus. And there are numerous reasons that these are not the easiest to start with. But if you are interested, definitely give them a try, but just be aware that maybe it might be a little bit frustrating. Or just do some research and maybe they won't be difficult at all, because once you're informed, things are definitely a lot easier. The presenter also challenged us to plant these two things, Swiss chard and kale, once and to harvest them all year round. I think we have the tendency to think our crops are spent when really they have a lot more life to give us. So she said to sow Swiss chard and kale in May and then harvest throughout the summer, continuing in the fall and winter to the following June. So you are harvesting all the way from May to June. So if you are seeding this plant in May and the last harvest you get is June and you're always planting it in May, you will always have good harvest of Swiss chard and kale. Well, that is all I have for you for vegetable gardens. Again, these are huge topics and I'm really just giving you the Cole's notes, but I encourage you, like I've always said in these videos, to do your own research, right? I'm sure there are local resources that you can kind of explore that are specific to your area, which vegetable varieties are more disease resistant or with less pest pressure and that type of thing. So just keep in mind, you know, these are huge topics. It's just to give you the summary of what I'm learning. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoy transferring my knowledge to you guys. It really helps me to absorb the information further. I think our next video will be on insects and diseases and identification and managing and controlling those types of things in the garden. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye.